1049 The Morning X, 8:16. It is Kev. My guest is Gary Hill. Gary has published, we'll say, tons of books. We'll say reams and reams of books right here in Rockford under Tales of Wonder and Dread, also the Music Street Journal as well. Gary, welcome back.
Hey, glad to be back, buddy.
Yeah, my favorite monster kid returns to the Morning X, man. Glad to have you back on the show. And you have a new book out right now called Horrifying Holidays. How did this come about?
That's actually been in the plans for a couple years because I found out late to the game that apparently telling spooky stories for Christmas is a really big deal in parts of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like it because we don't talk about it much in this country. But even if you think about it, A Christmas Carol is a ghost story.
Right.
And everybody loves that. So
there's that line in that one Christmas song where he says, there'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glory. And it's like, yeah, well, how does that fit in?
Right. Yeah, I guess it's a big deal in England and in Canada. It just sort of has fallen out of favor in this country, if it ever really was a big deal here.
I think Halloween kind of took over that role.
Yeah, I was talking to an interviewer out of Australia who's from England, and she was surprised at what we do with Halloween here, and she was shocked to find out that we don't do spooky stories for Christmas.
Interesting.
So I had the idea of doing a collection of spooky stories for Christmas, and I've got 3 fiction stories in there, and we've got some nonfiction. 4 of them I wrote, 1 my lovely wife Diane wrote, and then we've got 3 other fiction stories. 2 others from writers, Stephen Osborne, who's in Oregon, Illinois, and then a gent from named Glenn Tilson, who's in Toronto, Canada. And we've got a poem from Frank Kaufman, who used to teach English creative writing and stuff at Rock Valley.
Okay. The holidays are a time of horror for people in general, I think. A lot of people dread the holidays. And when you're talking about writing horror stories, the word dread should be on your mind the whole time. I mean, dread is the secret ingredient for a good horror story.
Right, and that's literally why Tales of Wonder and Dread. Wonder is science fiction, and Dread's the other side, which is the horror side.
That's great. Yeah. So what kind of stories are we going to find in here?
Well, I should mention there are also some public domain stories, and I was hoping, because Christmas Carol is such a great story, but a lot of people have never read it. I was hoping there was room to put it in there, and there was. So A Christmas Carol is actually in there.
Oh, the whole thing,
The whole thing, yeah, including, I found an 1843 edition, and since it's in public domain, so are the illustrations. So I used the illustrations from the original 1843 edition, which is kind of cool.
Wow. Yeah, I actually went back and read that a couple of years ago, and it's a lot shorter than I remember in school. In school, it seemed like the biggest book ever, but it's like a novella, right? It's a short novel.
Yeah, and so we've got that. The one that the gentleman from Toronto wrote is sort of about why a cat is staring at the top of a Christmas tree. And it's a really short story. One of my stories is called Secret Santa. And it's about a lady who starts getting these weird gifts at her door. And she has a ring thing, but she doesn't want to look at the footage because she loves mysteries and she's trying to figure out who's doing it. Once she does actually look at the footage, it gets even weirder.
Okay. You got me hooked.
Yeah, and then there's another one called No Sugar Plums, which I got the bright idea of what happens if a kid does sneak down one time and look at the Christmas tree and thinks it's Santa, but it's someone else dressed in red, someone much more, frightening. And it's sort of how it impacts his life. And that one's kind of interesting if you know the old Kolchak the Night Stalker TV show.
Sure.
It's all reported by a reporter who the story was told to, and I kind of envisioned Kolchak in that.
That's great.
And in fact, he uses, the guy at the end uses an alias of Vincent Kolchak, which is the direct reference to that. And then I've also got Home for Christmas, which is with this family, and they're kind of very Scrooge-like family. Always get together at Christmas time at home, and something goes horribly wrong this year. Let's put it that way.
Okay. See, now there you go. That's called a tease right there. That's how you get people hooked in. You have a ton of books already. You got a couple of books you wrote solely by yourself here. Wizard Song, The Homestead. I'm sure there's many more. But let's talk about what is coming up. What's next for Tales of Wonder and Dread?
No More New Year's, which you have a story in.
That's
Porch.
right. I don't talk about it a whole lot on the air, but I do write horror stories, and Gary's kind kind enough to put some of them in his books. And a story that I wrote in there will be in there called The Porch. And it's pretty gruesome.
It is gruesome, but like I told you, it reminds me of a Simon Pegg, Nick Frost sort of thing, like
Sure.
Shaun of the Dead kind of vibe, because it's pretty funny, too.
Yeah, it definitely has a twist of humor in it, and I think the humor kind of ties into how scary the story actually is, because somebody who was right in the head wouldn't necessarily be cracking jokes in that situation. The world is falling down around him. There are creatures. The world is going to hell, and he's sitting on his porch smoking a cigarette and laughing, basically. And it's all because he's extremely depressed about something that happened in his life, but pre-apocalypse, and he's still holding on to those feelings and not allowing the real feelings around him to happen. So it's scary on a deeper level when you even if you take away the monsters, and a lot of stuff that I write ends up with monsters in it.
Well, why wouldn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Everything should.
Yeah. I'll try to write things that are not supernatural, and the monster will find his way in. It just will. That's what happens. But, I feel yucky self-promoting, so let's get back to you. Okay. Let's get back to you.
But no more New Year's. It's all, all apocalyptic stories, either what leads up to the end of the world or what happens after the end of the world. And there are, I think, 2 public domain stories and 2 public domain poems, and then the rest is all original stuff. Heath D. Alberts, who's a local author too, he's got one in there, and I'm probably drawing a blank. I know. Oh, there's a gentleman from Australia, Adam Crump, who has a story in there.
Oh, great!
And I've got 2, and you've got the one. I think that's everybody in that one. No, Dustin Ernest, who's also from Rockford, has one in there. And that one I've published before, and I absolutely loved the story, so I asked him if we could use it in that one, too.
That's great, and you should definitely support local art, no matter what it is, and pick up a book and read. Gary, tell us how we can get a hold of some of these books.
You can go to GaryHillAuthor.com, and if you look, there are links to buy all the books there. You can't actually buy them there, but it'll take you to Lulu, where you can buy them. Otherwise, just go to lulu.com/spotlight/strange sound.
And you can see what local writers are up to, as far as what they're working on. But also, of course, there are some, you say, public domain stories, but classic horror tales in these books as well. It's really cool the way you have the books put together. And the cover art is astonishing on some of these, man. So I'm looking forward to getting a copy of this myself. Horrifying Holidays out now. Looking forward to No More New Year's. When does that come out?
December 2nd.
Great, right before the new year, just in time to stuff it in a stocking. And the books are a perfect size. If you've got a nice stocking, you can stuff it right in there. So, Gary Hill, thanks again for joining us here, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Thanks again.
This is the Morning X. If spilling hot coffee on your crotch was a morning show, that would be us.